Good afternoon. It is an honor for me to be here this afternoon, and this afternoon I'm going to present some analysis of data we did at Hanor looking into the impact of weaning age in the performance of pigs. So weaning. We all know weaning is it can be one of the most stressful events for a pig. Weaning is the separation of the pig from the sow, but this is not the only stressor for the pig at that time. There's a number of stressors. Pig go from a liquid to a dry feed in the time. There is a change in the physical environment when we place that pig into either nursery or wean to finish facility. There's pathogens that pigs have to face on, and so on, so on, so on. There's many stressors that occur in a short period of time for that pig, which then has biological consequences for that pig. And here, what I'm presenting is just two examples of what is the impact of weaning as a stressor into the gastrointestinal development of the pig. Studies from 1980s. Here in the left, showing a villi atrophy. So what I'm showing here is after weaning, how does the villi height changes over time for the next 11 days. So in green I'm showing is the unweaned pigs and the villi height for those pigs, and the squares in orange are showing the size of the villi after weaning. So after the first 24 hours, we can see a dramatic reduction in the villi size. So it's 40% reduction. And the villi is about half of the size of a normal villi after 5 days after weaning. So just give you an idea of the dramatic changes into the gastrointestinal structure in the gut of a pig. Tell us that the surface for absorption in the intestine is dramatically reduced. In the graph in the right, I'm showing is the enzyme activity for two enzymes, just as an example, amylase and lipase, for pigs that are not weaned and for pigs that are weaned. We are disturbing because of weaning event the normal development of those enzymes and reducing then the activity of those enzymes. Weaning occur at this point and disrupting the normal development. Enzyme activity is also reduced. So taking all these together give us a good idea of the high impact that weaning, just that event, has on the gastrointestinal structure and function in the gut of a pig. So what is the effect of stress? We talk about the stresses that have many stressors occurring in a short period of time, but what does the stress affect, or how does it impact the functionality of the gut? So Dr. Adam Moser has been focusing his research in this understanding, in the knowledge of how does the stress is related to gastrointestinal functionality. And he has been proposing this paradigm is the early life stress and how does affect the GI tract disease development. Okay. So here in the graph, just to explain briefly the graph, early in life, pigs are more susceptible to stress than later in life. And if any stress happens early in life, such as weaning, that stress has long-term consequences, showing in the red line. So pigs that were weaned or had any stress early in life will have long-term consequences. They will be at higher risk, and the disease will be more severe for any disease in the GI tract. And Dr. Adam Moser has focused his study in the understanding of the intestinal barrier function, how those tight junctions changes because of weaning age, how those are too affected. So basically understanding the barrier function that is being compromised because of the stress that happens or occur early in life. To measure that, or to measure permeability of the intestine or the barrier function of the intestine, he's using this chamber technique, which measures, here is mannitol, maybe it's too small to see in the back, but those two compounds just as a marker or intestinal permeability. And what he measures is the flux of those two compounds, one side to another side, going through a small intestinal tissue. And the greater the flux of those compounds will tell us the greater permeable the intestine is, disrupting more the barrier function. Just going into detail here. Here is a study the group Dr. Moser did, weaning pigs from 15, 18, 21, 23, and 28 days old, and measuring intestinal permeability and using mannitol as a marker of the intestinal permeability. Clearly, you can see that for pigs that are weaned early, in this case less than 23 days, the intestine is more permeable. The barrier function has been compromised when we compare to those that are weaned later, 23, 28 days. The bottom line of here is just a stress that occurs early in life has long-term consequences. And here we can see that has an impact, immediate impact on barrier function of the intestine. As pigs are weaned earlier, the effect is greater on the intestinal permeability. So what happens here, tight junctions are proteins that are disrupted and allowing more passage of pathogens through the intestine, which couldn't occur in normal circumstances. Here is just more data that he presented. We saw only this point after weaning having a high impact in the permeability of the intestine, just the event of weaning. But he measures the permeability at different times, 28, 56, and even 160 days, showing that any impact early in life has long-term consequences. Those pigs that were weaned early, they had higher intestinal permeability when compared to those that were weaned later. And here are groups that he compared 16 days old pigs weaned at 16 days old versus pigs that were weaned at 28 days old, but just to exemplify that long-term consequences of the intestinal disruption. But weaning, we said, is not the only stress in the pig. We had so many other stressors. He has demonstrated that mixing has also an impact in the functionality of the gut. And pathogens, they also have impact on the functionality of the gut. Here is a study looking to the impact of weaning age on intestinal barrier function and immune response to a enterotoxigenic E. coli challenge. The graph in the left is showing data that we saw before is the intestinal permeability. Here looking to the flux of a compound. The bars in white are showing what we saw before, the effect of the weaning age on intestinal permeability. He has pigs from 16, 18, and 20 days. Here, just looking to the white bars, we can see that intestinal permeability was compromised when pigs were weaned at either 16 or 18 days. But looking to the bars with the patterns, that shows the E. coli challenge, shows that dramatic increase in the intestinal permeability. So that intestine being very compromised into that function, into that barrier function when the pigs were exposed to a greater challenge, in this case an E. coli challenge. Very interesting, when the pigs were weaned later, here in this case 20 days old, we don't see that dramatic increase in intestinal permeability. So these pigs that were weaned later were able to handle better that extra challenge that they had. In the graph in the right, I'm showing the immune response. So what they did is to measure the number of neutrophils within that ileum tissue. And here, what they show, what the group presented, is that where pigs are weaned early, they are not able to respond to the pathogen challenge. Whereas when the pigs are weaned later, they have a greater response, and more number of cells were present in that tissue, showing that greater capability to respond to a challenge. So in summary, what they have been presenting is the effects of the stress into the gastrointestinal development. And early weaning is a stress that negatively impacts the intestinal structure, we look to the enzyme activity. It also disrupts the barrier function, which we show clearly, and also disrupt the immune response of those pigs being weaned early. Any negative impact of early weaning will be exacerbated by further stressors such as mixing, management, or pathogens, exposure of pigs to pathogens. And then all of these negative impacts into the gastrointestinal development of the pig and the immune response will have consequences in the growth of the pigs. The response to weaning is immediate, it's acute, and we learn that it has long-term consequences. So the literature, there's a study presented by Roger Main in 2004, and he looked into increasing weaning ages and what is the effect of that into the growth performance of pigs. He run 2 trials, one with 1,920 pigs and another with 3,000 pigs. It was on a sow farm, but multiple sites, so pigs going to nurseries and finishers in different locations. The graph in the left is showing the growth rate, so the average daily gain from weaning to final date, that is shown in grams here. And as you can see in the 2 studies, he presented a very consistent response in the change in the average daily gain by weaning age. The response was linear for the growth rate as well as for the mortality. The graph in the right showing the impact of weaning age in mortality and showing a reduction, also linear, when pigs were weaned from 12 to 21 days, or from 15.5 to 21.5 days. So very consistent responses, even though the weaning ages are a little bit different, the response is consistent in those 2 groups. Okay, we can appreciate the variation between those 2 groups as is normal in a commercial system. Pigs that are going to a different location will show different performance because of different stressors and different variables around that. But that has been shown. So what was the purpose of our study or analysis? As a system, we wanted to understand how weaning age was impacted the productivity of our system. First, we needed to see if there was any effect of weaning age into the performance of our pigs. But then we needed to quantify that effect as well. And that's what we did here. So here is just an illustration on the average weaning age of groups of pigs. So we decided to use 4 years of data for groups of pigs that were weaned from a single sow farm and went to a very similar uniform system. But the changes in weaning age, how was that impacting the further performance, the growth performance of pigs? The variation, we had some variation in the weaning age, and we also had 2 health events. We had active pairs at the beginning of 2010, and we have active PDB by the time most of people were being challenged by PDB around 2014. So then, having those 2 situations, we then decided to analyze what is the weaning age impact during those health challenge conditions. As I said before, it is a single sow farm. It was a 2,800 sow farm located in North Carolina. This sow farm being under construction, and that allows for the different weaning ages that we had. We had a total of 143 groups, wean to finish groups. Those groups went to Iowa, and the group size was about 1932 pigs within a group. As I said before, the data was from January 2010 to December 2014, and this histogram shows the number of groups within each weaning age. Just to give you an idea that around 19 and 24 days, we had a good number of groups within each weaning day, which allows for a nice analysis. We were able to reach to the production records for these groups in the sow farm and the closeouts. I already mentioned about those 2 health events that we had at the sow farm. And very important here, we decided to standardize the final weight of those pigs for the calculations on the growth performance data, average daily gain, feed intake, and feed conversion. What I mean by standardization is, if you take a look to this graph, every point is a single group, a final weight for a single group. And you can appreciate all the variation around final weights and final ages of those groups. And the question here was, how can I compare a group that is a final age of 180 days and weighs about 120 kilograms in this case, with a group that is perhaps growing at a similar rate, but it reached market or is sold 10 days later and weighs about 10 kilos or 8 kilos more. So then we needed to run into a standardization, and what this was, we assigned a growth curve for each of these groups, so that the growth curve was going to tell us what was the final weight or what was the time the pigs arrived to 136 kilograms, which is the same as 300 pounds. That was our final weight. That was the standardization we did for growth and for feed intake, and then therefore for feed conversion. The statistic description, I'll go quick on here. We use linear and nonlinear models. The closed out group was the experimental unit. And we use linear and nonlinear models because we had normally and non-normally distributed data. We know growth, feed intake is normally distributed, but mortality and upgrades is no normally distributed. So we had to explore also the options of nonlinear models that perhaps adjusted better to the data. So that's what we did. And then every model was tested for a goodness of feed. For linear models, the root mean square of error and R square. And for nonlinear models, the Pearson test and the AICC coefficient. Okay, and just going into the results of the analysis here, one of the questions was, if there is an effect of weaning age, what is the effect? The first question was if there was any effect of weaning age that was impacted the performance of our pigs. So here, just to exemplify that, is the wean to finish mortality. And we test that. We test weaning age along with other variables that we thought might impact the performance of those pigs. So here you have weaning age, health status, wean date, and facility type, variables that might affect the performance of the pigs. But the main two variables that explain a great proportion of the variation in this case was weaning age and the health status of the sow farm. So yes, weaning age had a huge impact on the mortality of pigs, and so does health status of the farm. So from here, we decided to analyze the data by weaning days, but also for the times that we had poor conditions, poor health conditions, analyze the data within those conditions. So you'll see a poor and a good health. Poor health being those times where the sow farm was under PAIRS or PDB, and good health when no of these health challenges were present at the sow farm. Showing wean to finish mortality here, what is the general impact of weaning ages? Here I'm presenting a scatter plot plotting mortality against weaning ages from 18 to 24 and a half days. And as you can appreciate, there's a great variation in the mortality too. But we were able to account for a great proportion of this variation by using in this case, a non-linear model. Here is an exponential model that in our analysis showed to be superior to the linear model. And feeder better the data. So that is what I'm showing here. It's an exponential function. And the advantage, I guess, for that function over the linear is that it assumes a greater rate of change in the mortality for younger pigs than for older pigs. So in other words, the reduction in mortality in the mortality of weaned pigs was greater if the pigs were weaned younger than it was if the pigs were weaned older. As I said before, we analyzed the data for good and poor health status of the farm. In the left, showing the poor. Similarly, we developed a non-linear model here for the mortality and their poor health conditions. The equation is significant, but as I was saying before, I think the advantage of using this non-linear model was to quantify greater reduction in mortality for pigs that are weaned younger than for pigs that are weaned older. In this case, if you go from 18 to 19 days old, the advantage in mortality is a reduction of 0.87% versus 0.51% if a pig is weaned from 23 to 24 days. The impact of weaning age is greater for pigs that are under poor health conditions. For those conditions where the sow farm was under PERS or PDB, the rate of change is greater than for those conditions that the farm was under good health. So there is an advantage in those two situations, but the advantage is greater for poor health conditions. Here showing the growth rate, the impact of weaning age of growth rate. Again, I just plotted here and showed the graph because I wanted for you to appreciate that variation on our population of observations. That's what we wanted to do the analysis for, is to observe the different variation between the groups of pigs. I know for a group of pigs that were within that 19 to 20 days old, the growth rate was very similar to pigs that were within 23 days old. But the probability for that to happen is lower. And that's what the graph is showing. You can have that, but if you look to a whole population basis, the probability to that occur is lower when the pigs are younger than when pigs are weaned older. Similar to the graph in the mortality here, showing the growth rate and their poor and good health. Linear models, those were the ones that explain better the variation around growth rate. Here is under poor health and a good health. Again, here there is a greater advantage in the growth of pigs when pigs, because of weaning age, when pigs are under poor health conditions than their good health conditions. Just to show the coefficients of those two, of the non-linear models used for the mortality and upgrades, that's the function we believe it was superior to linear function, and the coefficients presented the goodness of feed and the significance. For all the data, poor health and good health. Same for the linear models, growth rate, that include average daily gain, the days of pigs reaching to market, feed conversion, for all the data, and for data that was poor health and good health. So the rate of change, what happens, how weaning age impacted our system, and this is just a summary of what we took during the presentation. Pigs that are, and here is just showing the impact or the advantage of weaning, of weaning pigs 1 day older, from 18 to 24 days. So by increasing the weaning age by 1 day, from 18 days, pigs reach market 2 days earlier. They grow to about 8 grams per day better. There is about 1.4 points improvement in feed conversion. There is a reduction in upgrades, but most importantly, there is a reduction in mortality for those pigs. The effects being greater when pigs are under poor health conditions. So here we have pigs growing at 9.3 grams per day better when they are weaned older and are under poor health conditions. The rate of impact for mortality is greater in those conditions as well. And those two are very similar to what it has been presented before by Roger Main. Roger Main concluded a 9.9 grams per day improvement per additional weaning day which is very similar to what we found, and an improvement in 0.47% mortality, and again, very similar to what we found. So in conclusions, weaning age and health status of the sow farm, they did greatly impacted the lifetime performance of the pigs. The negative impact of early weaning was more profound or exacerbated when there was more challenges in these conditions where pigs were under poor health conditions. On this healthy farm, we consider this a healthy farm because there was few events, challenge events during that period of time. Mortality was reduced by 0.56%, and the growth rate of pigs were improved by 7.8 grams per day.